Hello, thank you for joining us today. We are really glad you are here. Here's Jim, your host of Time Out with Jim. So let's get started.
So you got endometrial, oh, you had endometrial cancer. What is that?
Basically, it's a womb cancer, so it's basically in the reproductive system, and that's where you produce like offsprings and stuff like that. So I was diagnosed with that at the age of 17. In 2 years ago, in 2018, I was diagnosed with that, and when I got diagnosed, it was really heartbreaking because they found that it was really rare for my age too, so it was kind of tough in that area.
So what age were you diagnosed?
Yeah, I was diagnosed at 17.
17, okay. Uh, what made you decide to get checked out? Like, what were the symptoms that made you say, something's not right?
So basically, it went back 6 years before that. So I suffered from an eating disorder before. It's called picker. It's when you eat like non-edible items. So I used to eat like tissues and stuff like that. So what happened from there? My iron levels went low, and it caused me to bleed quite a lot, like internally and externally. Like I used to get loads of cuts. I used to like even I had internal bleeding for such a long time, and the doctors thought one day let's just check it over, and then they diagnosed me with it 6 years later because they didn't know what was going on with all these cuts and bruises and internal bleeding, and then they found out that it was endometrial cancer.
Hmm. Did you go through like chemo or radiation?
I went through drugs that kind of was like chemo. So it was like drugs because I was so early in the cancer journey that they didn't want to risk me putting in me into chemo or radiotherapy. So I had drugs which I took for 3 months before my surgery to remove the whole organ.
Now, with those drugs you was on, was there any kind of major side effects?
Yeah, hair loss, fatigue, tiredness, nausea, and just even like your mental health. Like I was depressed during the time. I didn't want to socialize with people, so it had a big effect on me physically and mentally.
How much family support did you have, or did you have like a support network, like with friends or?
Yeah, I had my family. Like I had my mom, my dad, my brother, my sister. I also had like my friends, my closest friends. They were with me the entire way. And although I was single at the time, I had my family and friends, that support system, and it helped me to overcome it. Like obviously I had the surgery like 3 months later, and everyone was so supportive, especially because I was in education at the time too.
When you were told you had cancer, when did it actually sink in, and how did it make you feel?
So when I was first diagnosed, I wasn't feeling any emotions. It was my mother who showed the emotions first before I did, and it took a while to sink in, and it still like traumatizes me till this day. Like I'm thinking, why did I get it? Because no one really knew the whole cause of it. So it was like in that aspect, we it's trying to sink in that news, but it was really hard.
Do you want to give a shout out to your doctors?
Yes, I do. I want to give a shout out to my doctor, Dr. Chattopadhy. He helped me with the whole thing. He was the one who recommended me the surgery and saving me from the whole cancer section. So I want to give a big shout out to him and also to the nurses that was there as well. I had a cancer nurse beside me this entire time. She was amazing. So I want to give a shout out to her too.
Uh, okay, you were cancer. For the time you were told you were cancer free, so how many years was that?
It was only 3 months between my diagnosis.
Oh, okay.
It was only 3 months. So I, like, obviously I had took drugs for 3 months. Then they found out they were doing many blood tests in between, and they found that it wasn't efficient. It wasn't growing or shrinking. It stayed the same basically. So they recommended me to do the surgery since the beginning, but I put off it quite a lot because obviously it would affect my whole future basically. So I was putting it off. And my uncle, who was a doctor, he came with me to the appointment and he was like, this is the best option to do this surgery because if you continue with these drugs, you would have still had cancer.
How are you doing now?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Like as a cancer survivor, I'm speaking about it a lot more, which is great because many cancer survivors should speak about it if they want to bring awareness to other people. So I'm doing well at the moment.
With endometrial cancer, has anybody else in the family have it?
That was the thing about trying to find out the cause. I was put into the genetics team and they could not find any family history of cancer from both my parents' side. They could not find any traces of it. In my entire family tree, they found that I was the only one who had this. And the other risk factors, that's why it was they called it spontaneous, like a spontaneous cancer, which is really strange to think, actually.
What would you tell other women who is going through the same thing as you are? Any kind of word of wisdom or advice?
Okay, so to my younger woman who's going through this, because not many young people do actually go through this. I know with this particular kind of cancer, it's for people who are much older. So to my younger women, just stay strong, believe what you believe in. If you want to remove it, you can. If you want to treat it the way it is, treat it the way it is. But just keep on going. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, basically.
Did you face any obstacles during your treatment process? And if so, how did you overcome?
So with the obstacles, obviously I was debating whether to do the surgery or not. Like I was like, should I do the surgery? Should I not? The drugs really did take effect on my symptoms, as I said before. It was really horrible. I did not want to go out. I didn't want to speak to anyone, and I wasn't on social media. Like I took social media off my phone because I just wanted to focus on myself during that time. So it was a really tough time, but I managed to get through all of them and eventually got my surgery done. Yeah, so I have my own brand which I've released. It's called Movement Fitness and Nutrition. It's a subscription-based online platform for people with disabilities, medical conditions regarding fitness needs, nutrition needs, and it's very personalized. So make sure you check that out. I have a YouTube channel too, so we
Okay.
can link that so people can watch it because I think it's very useful. And I also own two podcasts. So I have one called the Aware Panel. We talk to different people about different societal issues today. So we already touched based on climate change, environment, mental health, homeschooling, happiness, and stuff like that. And I recently launched another one where it empowers people with disabilities and medical conditions. And the topics we covered in that podcast includes OCD, depression, Crohn's disease, baxillary plexus injury, and so much more. So if you want to check that out,
Yeah.
contact me, basically.
Do you have anything else to add? And thank you for taking your time
No
talking with
worries,
me.
no worries.
I would like to thank Prav for taking the time out of her day to talk to me about endometrial cancer.
If this episode touched you in any way, please share it with your family and friends, and please consider donating whatever you can afford. Go to anchor.fm/timeout with Jim. This will help us keep this podcast going. Thank you for listening, and until next time, God bless.